The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport podcast. My name is Dylan Mangan of the Southern Star and I'm joined as always by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. Before we get into things, I'd just like to give our listeners a gentle reminder to please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, where your bank really does matter. Choose Credit Union, choose local, choose community. Now, we have not one, not two, but three special guests appearing on this week's podcast. First up, we'll be hearing from former Cork footballer Haulie O'Sullivan, who joined Kieran, to chat about the small matter of an All-Ireland quarter-final against Derry this weekend. Haulie's great whenever we have him on, and while Cork have been brilliant so far in the championship, he still says there's room for improvement, so bring on Sunday is what I'll say. Later on then, we'll be joined by the Drinagh Rangers management dream team of Don Hurley and Declan Deasy. The pair have led Drinagh to unprecedented success in the West Cork League over their 22-year reign, but they're stepping away from next season on, so they're joining the podcast to reflect on their time in charge and on West Cork soccer in general. However, before we get to those, there's still plenty happening elsewhere in West Cork sport. And Kieran, let's start with a story that we've been covering for weeks now, and that is the dual player situation for camogie and ladies footballers. We've been speculating on whether or not the Camogie Association and the LGFA would find a resolution to the fixture clashes, but perhaps to nobody's surprise, they haven't.
You're dead right, Dylan. There has been no resolution, so we will have a third fixture clash in the space of 2 months this Saturday. So that means the Cork ladies footballers are taking on Tipperary in Clonakilty at 2:00, while at 3:00 in Innis, the Cork Camogie team is taking on Clare, and they're both final round games in the round robin stage of their respective All-Ireland championships. Both Cork teams need to win or need to avoid defeat to progress. So they're really important games, because defeat for either will spell the end of their All-Ireland campaign this season. So you can understand why both management teams really want all their players for games like this. But unfortunately, because we haven't got a resolution, because common sense wasn't tapped into, or because the two associations couldn't come to an agreement for whatever reason, now we have another clash. So we have four dual players here in Cork: Libby Coppinger, Hannah Looney, Aoife Healy and Orla Cahalan. Unfortunately, Orla is injured at the moment, so she's not, I suppose, part of the conversation for this weekend. But those other three players, they will now have to be split up for the weekend. That decision has been made, but we won't know what it is until later in the week. So whether it's Libby with the Camogie team and Hannah and Aoife with the football team, or vice versa, or whatever way they want to mix and match the players, they will be split up. And that's not ideal at all, because we saw on Sunday night, and it was through the Southern Star, that the Cork ladies football and Camogie panels released a joint statement. Their plea was, please don't force these players into having to make a decision. But that's exactly what happened. That was like I suppose kind of last resort in a way, Dylan, when that joint statement came out. The Cork ladies football team, the Camogie team, were trying to highlight this as much as they possibly could. Huge game for both teams, but players will miss out, and they were trying to bang that drum, and they did create noise, picked up by a load of media organisations, a lot of chatter on social media about it as well. But unfortunately, there is no white smoke, and both games are going ahead as previously scheduled. So again, it's the dual players caught in the middle.
Of course, this also is happening with the backdrop of the ongoing protest that these players are part of as well. So we saw at the weekend teams across the country taking part in sit-down protests before games. And it kind of seems like the sport's in a little bit of a strange situation at the moment, where players are obviously not happy with how things are going. And it kind of, I don't know about you, but it maybe would be a little bit refreshing if some of the male counterparts were to come out and at least voice some support for the players, because obviously now with the dual player situation, there are no dual players in men's GA anymore. Maybe that's where the women's game is going as well. But maybe that's something that could help add an extra voice to the conversation.
Let's say to almost kind of amplify what the ladies are trying to say. And that's actually interesting, because I noticed on my Twitter account, I think it was Tuesday, in the space of a couple of minutes, 4 or 5 current senior Cork footballers retweeted a tweet we put out on Sunday night, kind of highlighting the statement that the Cork ladies and camogie teams put out. So I found that refreshing, that the lads, obviously they have a huge game coming up this weekend, but they took time out to kind of share this message with their own followers on social media. So that was a step in that direction. But like you said, it would be great if even, let's say, the men's county board or something like that, or the players just stood up and just helped the Cork ladies and footballers and camogie get their message across, because it's like they're shouting into the wind at the moment, because it's just not being heard. It's not being heard by the various associations. I know
they're all represented by the GPA represent everyone now as well. So you'd think there might be a little bit of room there as well.
You'd wonder though, and this is just me speculating, like if the associations are really bothered by dual players, if they'd be happy in a sense that if the dual players would just kind of drift off into extinction, like it's almost happened at the senior intercounty men's game. Would life be a lot easier for the organisations if they didn't have the headache of these dual player dilemmas propping up every year? Again, that's just me speculating. Maybe both associations, the LGFA and the Camogie Association, really do care about the dual players and really want to kind of protect this tradition. But from what we've seen in the last couple of months, that just doesn't seem to be the case. Kind of like whatever about this weekend and not moving the games because the various associations want the games, because they're final round games, they want them to be played at the same time because it feeds into draws and so on after. The last fixture clash was nuts. Like that was when Libby Carpenter hopped into the car after playing the full game for the Cork Camogie team in Páirc Uí Chaoimh and went up to Salt Hill that evening, came on as a second half sub for the Cork footballers. And why that is nuts is the weekend before was free, the Sunday after those games was free, and the weekend after was free. Yet those fixture makers just couldn't come together and say, let's move one of those games. So it's just they're making life awkward for dual players, and it's such a shame because dual players and Cork have such a great tradition. And we actually have a piece by Tom Lyons in Thursday's Southern Star where he charts the history of dual players in Cork and explains just why it's so important in this county, why dual players have played such an important part of the GA story in Cork for, going back 50, 60, 70, 80 years. He goes back to when they kind of killed in the 1940s and 50s. And Tom even goes back, Dylan, to the birth of the GAA and how a dual player came to be in the first place. So it's a really interesting read. And what the current dual players are trying to do, as well as play for both counties at the top level, they're protecting a great tradition here in Cork, because the reality is when it's gone, and it's not going to come back. So they're really trying to safeguard and cling on to their dual player status, because like I said, when it's gone, it's gone.
Only time will tell there. I'm sure we'll be talking about it on podcasts in the weeks and months to come. Another story we've covered a lot on the podcast in recent weeks and months is the ongoing rugby boom in West Cork. And last week we got wind of, I don't know, can you call it a big transfer? I'm not sure if transfer is the right word, but a big transfer of Bandon rugby. With Reggie's son, is that the right pronunciation, joining?
That's what I called him when he was here, Reggie's son. So unless I've butchered his name, which I've been known to do, that's what I'm going to continue to call him until I'm corrected.
So he's joining he's a former Toulouse and Spain coach, a huge figure in the rugby world, and he's joining Bandon Rugby and Bandon Grammar in kind of a dual role as a technical director. That's correct, yeah?
Yeah, so it's big news for both the grammar school and for Bandon Rugby. Regis was here before for 2 years, between 2016 and 2018. And anyone who worked with him or came across him during his time in West Cork had only really positive and good things to say about him. He has an incredible coaching CV. When he came to Bandon first day, he was a former Spanish national men's team coach. He played in the top 14 in France with a couple of teams. He was a forward coach with Bordeaux. So he really, like, he's top class. Like, he's a really highly rated coach kind of in rugby circles. So for Bandon to get him first day, it was a big coup. He left Bandon in 2018 to move back to Toulouse. He got involved with the Toulouse coaching setup again. But here we are 5 years on, and the stars have aligned, and Regis is coming back to West Cork. So we've a piece in Thursday Southern Star where I chat to Dan Murphy of Bandon Rugby Club, where he fills me in on I suppose, the background to this story and getting Regis back in. So Regis will work as an underage director of underage rugby with Bandon Rugby Club, and he's going to work with the grammar school as well in a technical director role. So he's basically working with the young players in both the grammar school and the rugby club. So it is big news for West Cork Rugby to have a man of his ilk back here again, and the fact that he wanted to come back. And I think that almost speaks volumes, Dylan, for just the attraction of West Cork, because from what I was told is Regis really loved the fact that when he's based in Bandon or around Bandon, he's 20 minutes from surfing, he's 20 minutes from the mountains, he's 20 minutes from the city. He loves the West Cork people. And that's always, and I was speaking to him over the years, he just really, really enjoyed his time here. I tracked him down in France 2 years ago for a big 16-page rugby special we did in the Southern Star. And he was telling me that he still considers himself a West Cork man, which is incredible. West Cork really left its mark on Regis, and it's great news he's coming back, and it's great news for both the Bandon Rugby Club and the grammar school. But I think it's just great for the region in general, because you're bringing a man of that talent back into the region.
Yeah, some of that pedigree. It's like we have the Drinagh Rangers lads on later. It's like the equivalent of a Man United or Liverpool coach coming over to be their technical director. Like, he is that kind of held in that high regard. So it is great for them, absolutely. Moving on then to some local GAA. Carbery Rangers will play in Division 1 County League football next year after triumphing in their must-win game at home to Kilnamartyra. Kieran, they ran it close going to the final day, but they got over the line in the end.
Yeah, it was squeaky bum time for Carbery Rangers last Friday night at home against Kilnamartyra. They knew it was a game that they had to avoid defeat. So the best way to avoid defeat is to win. And they did just that. So we went down to the final day of the season, and the end result is that Carbery Rangers got the win they needed, and they've safeguarded their Division 1 status for 2024, which is important for Seamus Hayes' side, because they have a lot of young players there. And by being exposed to the Nemos and the Bars and the Havens and all those top teams, that can only be good for the progression and development of those young players. So it is good news. It's very good news for Carbery Rangers that they're going to be in Division 1 again next year. And we know that Newcestown, they're one of the local clubs who will be up there with them. Newcestown won promotion from Division 2. I'm just going to quickly, Dylan, I'm trying to bring it up here. There's a couple of league finals on this weekend, and just to mention the West Cork teams in action. So Newcestown, who I mentioned there, they're playing Carrigaline in the Division 2 Football League county final on Saturday in Brinny at 7:30 p.m. While on Friday night, Donnies are taking on Knocknagree in Macroom in the Division 3 Football League final, and that's a 7:30 p.m. throw in Macroom. So that's two West Cork teams in county league finals this weekend. So Donnies already know they're going up to Division 2, and we'll have Newcestown up in Division 1 along with Carbery Rangers and Castlehaven next season.
Great stuff for them. We're going to take a quick break now, and when we come back, we'll be hearing from Haulie O'Sullivan on this weekend's big game up in Croke Park.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Now, welcome back to the Star Sport podcast. And now it's time for our first guest of the week, and that is former Cork footballer Haulie O'Sullivan. Kieran, you caught up with him to chat about not only Cork's great win against Roscommon, which we haven't mentioned yet on the podcast, but this weekend's huge quarterfinal against Derry. How did Haulie see things panning out there?
Yeah, huge game on Sunday. So 1:45 on Sunday in Croke Park. It's Cork against Derry in an All-Ireland quarter-final. And the good news for Cork fans who aren't travelling, it's on TV, Dylan. We don't have to mess around. No, I was just saying we don't have to mess around with that GA gore or any of that nonsense, if you want to put it that way. So we're one of the lucky ones. So we'll travel up to Croke Park on Sunday to see how the Cork footballers get on. Huge game. Cork are trying to get through to their first All-Ireland semi-final since 2012, while Derry are a team who were the All-Ireland semi-final last year. They're Ulster champions again this year. They're Division 2 champions. So this is the biggest test of the season so far for John Cleary's men. But Cork are going to go in. They have momentum behind them, Dylan. Beat Mayo the weekend before last, beat Roscommon last weekend. So that's back-to-back wins against Division 1 teams. So Cork will be high in confidence going into this. I suppose there has been a bit of damage along the way. It's been or if you want to call it, attrition. Some of the Cork footballers are carrying knocks and niggles. So we're waiting to see, will Brian Hurley recover from his hamstring injury to line out on Sunday? Luke Fahey is another injured out. Rory Dean from Bantry Blues came off again last weekend against Roscommon, but the news on him is looking more positive. It was that neck shoulder injury that he'd suffered against Mayo the week before, but all the signs are that Rory, touchwood, should be fit. So huge game for the Cork footballers, one game away from an All-Ireland semi-final, and you'll hear from Haulie O'Sullivan now. He's optimistic that the Rebels can get the job done, but a lot needs to go right. Well, Haulie, here we are, the Monday before the All-Ireland quarterfinals, and we're talking about a Cork team that was in the last 8 draw, that is true to the big weekend in Croke Park. So Tomás O'Shea said it on the Sunday game on Sunday night that Cork have turned the corner. Would you go along with that assertion?
I would definitely say so. Like if you take 12 months ago, and in the space of that 12 months, we travelled to Croke Park last year to play Dublin in a quarter-final, and it was damage limitation even before you went. You were after taking a trouncing off Kerry. You played, I think it was Loud and Limerick in the lead up to that game. Poor quality teams. The team or the group weren't in the same position that they are now. You had a far more convincing league campaign this year, even though there were a couple of blips in it. Let's say the Meath game, and you could have beaten Derry, who were now playing. You could have beaten Dublin. You were showing that there was that improvement that had happened in the intervening time. Fitness levels have improved hugely, and these games, and even thinking back like the last day when Brian Hurley didn't line out, the first thing that came into our heads was, are we going to be back in Innis again? Sorry about the dogs there. Are we going to be back in Innis again?
A very excited Cork fan.
Just 2 seconds. There's a car going. Yeah. But like it kind of had the feel of, are you going to be back in Innis again? There was that feeling of deja vu. Hurley is out, where the score is going to come from, But that was never going to happen again. I think that game in Innis could have been the best thing that ever happened to this group, because it seemed to really steal them and bring them together. And like Sherlock came in and did a far better from all the others. You take the first 20 minutes for what it was very, very poor. But then, they turned the corner before halftime, got the few scores, came out reinvigorated, went ahead. But then there's a learning there as well. They probably set back that too soon and invited Roscommon on and could have ended up losing the game, but had the wherewithal and the fortitude to engineer that final score decline. So look, I think we're going to Croke Park this time with belief and a genuine chance that we can beat Derry, rather than going in fear and, hoping to control the scoreboard like we did last year.
Like you said there, Haulie, when Cork land up to Croke Park this weekend, it's in a far different position to 12 months ago. After beating 2 Division 1 teams in a row for the first time, I think someone said since 13 or 14 years, I think, in that length of time. But not only that, but
I think 12 years was mentioned.
Yeah, but not only that, Haulie, the fact, like even John Cleary saying the group was a lot fitter this year. You can see now that the team is able to last 70 minutes. Rewind to last year, that Munster semi-final against Kerry and that All-Ireland quarter-final against Dublin up in Croke Park. In the second half, Cork faded in both. What we've seen in the last couple of games is Cork are coming strong in the last quarter and they're able to get the winning scores. So there's so many signs and reasons for optimism for Cork fans ahead of this weekend. But before we look back in the game last weekend, just to get your thoughts on the draw, when you saw it's Cork and Derry this weekend, what was your first reaction?
Well, my initial thought would have been that I'd like to have had Armagh, because I would have seen Armagh as the kind of lesser of the three, and it would have been the best draw for Cork, and it would have been a good step in their direction, and you'd have had I'd have seen that as your major chance of getting into an Ireland semi-final. Not that I don't think that Cork can beat Derry, but I suppose, the last two games, Kevin Walsh's familiarity with Mayo and Roscommon probably has played a huge part in Cork's performances against those two teams. And look, there's familiarity there now again, because you're familiar with Derry, you've played in the last 2 years in the National League. We've seen an awful lot of them. They were at the business end last year. They looked like they're one of the farm teams this year that are going to be All-Ireland contenders. But that familiarity is not as if we're going in, with our eyes closed and haven't any experience of what we're going to be playing. We've already seen these fellas this year in Páirc Uí Chaoimh and know what they're capable of. And I think even between that time and this, I think Cork have improved an awful lot. And the good thing about it is there's still a huge amount of room for improvement that we could take from the game last Sunday.
I was just looking at some of Derry's results there. They topped Group 4 of the round robin stage, beat Donegal, beat Clare, drew Monaghan in their opener, go back to the Ulster Championship, and they came through against Armagh in an epic Ulster final. And like you said, Haulie, last year, All-Ireland semi-finalist as well. So they're very much a team that's been coming the last couple of years. What do you think the big danger about this Derry team is for Cork?
Well, I suppose we've seen the last 2 years and no Cork have improved, but Derry's physicality and fitness levels were far ahead of where Cork were. And I know that Cork drew with them in the league, but like at one stage Derry were 7-up and left Cork back into it to equalise. But for long stages in that game earlier on in the year, they were far superior to Cork. They have some fantastic players. You have Conor Glass and Rogers in the middle of the field. O'Callaghan and Maguire are going to have to be at their absolute best to break 50-50 there. Chrissy McKagan, their back line, McKinless, up front, McGuigan and Ethan Doherty. They look a little bit further down the line than Cork at the moment, but we'll be hoping that Cork have so much room for improvement, even from the Roscommon game, that they can be very close or even get over the line with this one.
Looking back, in the Roscommon game on Saturday, big result for Cork in front of almost 15,000 fans in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. It was a game Cork were down 4 points in the first half, went up 5 points in the second half. Then Roscommon hauled themselves level, and with that late winner by Kevin O'Sullivan. But what's the big positive that you took out of this game, Haulie?
Well, I suppose we have to remember as well that you've developed huge consistency. And I suppose we were talking a while ago about the difference between Cork last year and Cork this year. We have to remember that Daniel O'Mahony didn't play last year, Tommy Walsh didn't play last year, Luke Fahey didn't play last year, Brian O'Driscoll or Rory Dean. That's a third-year team. And all these fellas are major players over the last three or four games for Cork now. So like that third of the team has been such an improvement, because like those 5 guys bring such physicality, such running ability, and such power and football ability, obviously, to the team. That has made a huge difference. And they've like, even in that short intervening amount of time, like we always said that you had Maguire and you had Powter were kind of the 2 natural leaders on the Cork team. But like, you have to say, after the last 2 games, there are leaders, if not numerous leaders, in every line of the pitch. You saw Tommy Walsh's point before halftime at the outside of the right. That not alone brought the team into the game, it brought the whole crowd in the stadium into the game. Rory Maguire's 2 points after halftime. Like, he's showing unbelievable leadership this year at vital times in games. Brian O'Driscoll was man of the match for me. I don't know, did he get the overall man of the match or not, but his work rate was absolutely savage, and the physicality he brings to the game. So look, like, first 20 minutes was terrible. We looked better without the ball than we did with it. In other words, our defensive structure was very good, but then we were turning it over and the play and taking the ball into the tackle and taking poor decisions and shots. And, we were letting Roscommon dictate the game. After half time, we pressed on the kick out, got the reward, Carbery got the goal, we went 5 up, and all of a sudden you could even see the signal on the field, or whether it came from the bench, we retreated, invited Roscommon on, they got the 5 back. And, in the end, we were probably lucky that I think it was Conor Daly, overcarried, and we got the free out, and Maguire and Powter managed to get Kevin O'Donovan in for the fisted winner. So look, there's so much there they can improve on. The first 20-25 minutes, terrible. We saw more variety on Cork's long kick out, which we hadn't seen. It was long and left all year. It was far more varied when they went long the last day. So, there's heaps of improvement, and the belief and confidence that they're going to get from another win over a big team. That's going to play a huge part as well.
For the development of this Cork team, to beat Mayo in the Gaelic grounds the weekend before last, to beat Roscommon at home last weekend, 2 Division 1 teams, and John Cleary spoke about it in the Star last week, that I suppose we have to wait and see how much these wins will benefit this Cork team and take them further along the road. But now Cork are winning games against Division 1 teams. They're eking out different ways to win. Like against Mayo, came back 1-6 in the final quarter. Against Roscommon the last day, it was an injury time point. So we're seeing this Cork team is learning different ways to win as well, which is probably important, Haulie, as they keep developing.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Like close encounters bring a team together, and if you get out the other end of close encounters, it has a great gelling effect, and it instills huge belief in the camp. And you can imagine, people complain about the games coming thick and fast weekend after weekend, but the Cork squad and the Cork dressing room must be a wonderful place to be at the moment. After those 2 big wins, getting back into training on, well, they're probably on a recovery session on Sunday, but getting back into training on Tuesday or Wednesday night, instantly having to prepare for the next game, knowing it's going to be another huge game, knowing you're in a good place, knowing you're in extremely good condition. And I suppose the one worry is, will Hurley make it the next day? Will Luke Fahey make it the next day? How fit was Rory Dean going into the game the last day? I suppose that's the other side of the games coming thick and fast. But then you look to have your panel look strong as well, because what's happening coming off the bench has been extremely beneficial also. Where you got 1-5 off the bench against Mayo, and you got 1-3 the last day off the bench. And, you'll be hoping also that Conor Corbett, who was an extremely promising minor and under 20 player, that goal the last day would be the boost in confidence he needs to start showing that level of, that level of ability that he has, that will make him a top class senior player.
You mentioned there about Brian Hurley. Obviously, he was out injured against Roscommon. We don't know whether he'll be back or not for Derry this weekend. But for Cork to do what they did and to win a game without their captain, without their, I suppose, the top forward of the last couple of years, that's probably another encouraging sign that other fellas have stepped up. And Haulie, this is also a Cork team. We don't have Colin O'Mahony either. So we saw Sherlock the last year. You said like Corbett off the bench. We saw a lot of scores from Rory Maguire, Tommy Walsh, and lads like this. So we're getting scores from everywhere. But to win a game without Brian Hurley, again, it's probably important for the group.
Well, it's definitely important for the group. But, like Hurley is a very important player. But, I'd say he's been struggling for a while with these injuries that he's been carrying now, because you could see in the Mayo game when Mayo got on top after half time and O'Hara was marking him, and O'Hara started to take off, and Brian Hurley was at that stage, whether he had picked somebody up or not, he was starting to struggle to follow him. And the question was, would John Cleary hold Sherlock again, or would he start him? And I suppose he had no choice but to start him. And sure, Sherlock first touch, left foot over the bar. Do you know what I mean? Like, he did his job as the Lone Ranger up front. And like, I suppose if you look at it really, like, Cork they're playing 6 backs, then you have your 2 midfielders and probably 5 of the forwards. They're probably midfielders or half hours as well. So like, you're playing 6-7-1 as such. Do you know what I mean? So like that one guy up front who was Sherlock the last day is extremely important. But I think Corbett, if Corbett can get his belief and confidence up, he could play a huge part, considering Colin O'Mahony isn't there either. So look, the scores are coming from different parts of the field, and it's showing great confidence from the likes of Tommy Walsh and Rory Maguire and these boys. But then, there was a huge amount of wastefulness there in the first half the last day as well. You saw the shot from Kieran O'Hanlon and Brian O'Driscoll had a poor shot. Luke Fahey had a poor shot. Rory Dean got turned over 3 times there in the first half, taking the ball into the tackle. Like, like we're doing very, very well, but there's still so many things we can do better that it makes it exciting going into the Derry game.
You mentioned earlier, Haulie, about Brian O'Driscoll. You gave him your man of the match. He was immense the last day against Roscommon, and John Cleary was chatting about him after to the media, and he was saying that Brian is now starting to fulfil that potential that he had as an under-21. There was last years for Brian, the last 3 or 4 years, when he wasn't involved with the senior squad. But Cleary has brought him back, and he's repaying Cleary now with his performances. What have you made of Brian the last couple of days, a couple of games, and what do you think that he brings to this team?
Well, I suppose the first time I got up close and personal with Brian O'Driscoll, apart from playing against him way back in the day, was when I was with Carbery last year. And look, he's a phenomenal athlete and a phenomenal leader. You know, it was the first real taste of you get to know him in the dressing room, you get to know him outside the dressing room, your training and all the rest of it. You know, it was the first real sense of him that I got. And look, he's in unbelievable shape. You know, a lot of people think that he's far older than what he is, because he's been around for so long. He played for 4 years under 21. Like, you know, he played under 21 the same year as he was minor. So, like, a lot of people think that he's on the 30 mark and over, but he's actually in his absolute prime, and he's in absolute prime condition. And like, there's even more in him. Like, you saw him with Carbery last year. You know, a lot of his playing in the league and in the early stages of the championship, I would consider it nearly as cagey from his own point of view. You know, he has a lot more ability to kick points from distance, his foot passing ability, there's more there. But like his GPS stats and his ability to cover the field, you know, I'd love to see them, because it must be up there with the best on the Cork squad and up there with anybody in the country, I'd say, at the moment. And his physicality, his ability to cover the pitch, his ability to link up the play, he can score, he can defend, like you saw. I think it was the very last play, the last time when Roscommon were pushing for the equaliser after Cork getting the point. You know, it was O'Driscoll did the interception back in the right corner back position. So like, he was still going at full tilt at 75, 76 minutes, you know, which is a testament to himself, considering he had been out of it for 3 or 4 years. And the talk is always there that it takes 2 or 3 years to get up to the level of fitness to play inter-county. But it's just a mark of the man and how well he minds himself, that he was instantly able to go in and be at the level and be ready to play for Cork.
Switching it back to this weekend, Cork Derry. What do you think Cork need to improve to have a chance of taking Derry down?
Well, if they do what they did in the first 20 minutes again, Derry will punish Cork far more than Roscommon did. Like, Roscommon were probably, considering they were so much on top, they were probably too patient in what they were trying to do. They could have put Cork to the sword far more comprehensively in that first 25, 30 minutes. You know, Cork probably only created 1 goal chance. You know, you had the hand pass that went across to Maguire. I can't remember who gave that hand pass in the first half again. One went over Maguire's head. That was the only other half chance. You know, I suppose you did have Chris Jones mispicked up a ball that went out for a wide ball. That was probably another half goal chance, but Carber's one was probably the one main chance, and we had been creating far more goal chances than that, and we will need goal chances against Derry. The game management in the last 10 minutes, I would say, was questionable, considering that the high press and the kick out had worked so well and you were in full control of the game. And Cork retreated, invited Roscommon on, and almost lost the game as a result. It was far too early to retreat. You know, there were still 10, 12, 13 minutes on the clock. We were in control of the game. We could have pushed on from 5 points. You'll be happy if Hurley is fit, that he'll bring an extra bonus to it. If Luke Fahey isn't fit, will you see the likes of Tom Clancy Clan coming in, who actually played very well when he came on the last day and looked very comfortable. So look, I think Cork will go up there with absolutely no fear and go up there to have a serious cut off Derry. And I would not be one bit surprised if this went down to the wire again and Cork came out the right side.
Fantastic. That's the hope we all share, Haulie, that Cork come out the right side this weekend. Thanks for joining us.
No problem.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Welcome back to the Star Sport podcast. It's good as always to hear from Haulie O'Sullivan. And Kieran, just quickly before we move on, I want to put you on the spot with a prediction for this weekend. How do you see things panning out?
We have to go to Cork, don't we, Dylan? You know,
we do.
We're buoyed by confidence after the last 2 2-2 victories against Mayo and Roscommon. So I'm back in Cork to make it 3 big scalps in a row. It's going to be hard. Jesus, like, you can't say it's not going to be a difficult game for Cork, because Derry will go in as favourites. All the signs point to a Derry win. But it's just something different about this Cork team in the last couple of games. They're finding different ways to win. They're showing character. They're showing resilience. John Cleary wanted them to make the right decisions in the big moments of games, and they're doing that now. They'll be up against it, but hopefully we'll get a big Cork crowd up there. And I'm hoping, and I'm backing the Rebels to get us through to an All-Ireland semi-final, and the bandwagon will roll on for another couple of weeks.
That sounds good to me. I'll jump on board that bandwagon, no problem at all. Now we're going to hear just now from Drinagh Rangers management dream team. That's Don Hurley and Declan Deasy. We mentioned earlier they've led Drinagh to numerous West Cork League titles and many trophies over their 22-year reign. But Kieran, you caught up with them as they're stepping away next season, much to the delight of the rest of the league, I'm sure.
These two, Don and Declan, what they've achieved as Drinagh Rangers joint managers is incredible. Like you said there, Dylan, 22 years at the helm, and 11 Premier Division crowns in that time, 4 Beamish Cups, and there's a load more besides that as well. So that's almost quarter of a century that the two lads have been in charge of the Drinagh Rangers team, but they feel that now is a time to step aside and hand the reins over to the other coaches in the club. Because the good news for everyone in West Cork soccer is that the Don and Declan are still heavily involved in so many other aspects of local soccer that they're not going away from that. So Declan Deasy is the chairperson or the chairman of the West Cork Schoolboys and Schoolgirls League. Don is the chairman of Drinagh Rangers Club, and he's also involved in the Kennedy Cup and the underage coaching. So there's so much more that these two men are involved in. So it's great that West Cork soccer can pick in their brains, experience and knowledge for foreseeable future. But as for Drinagh Rangers in charge of the adult team, they're stepping back. It's going to be interesting, I think, and they're going to talk about it soon, and we'll hear from them that they think that there's, just because they're stepping away, that it's not going to mean that Drinagh are going to fall away. And that's probably true. You can't see Drinagh they've been so dominant. They're 3-in-a-row Premier Division champions. But it will be a change. It'll be a different voice for the players. There's nearly every player in that team. Well, obviously every player in that team has only heard Don and Declan as their manager. So it'll be a bit unusual going into next season. But Drinagh are an incredible outfit, an incredible club when it comes to soccer, and they just guarantee success. Their consistency is incredible. But they'll have to plan for next year without the two great men, Don and Declan. And as you'll hear now, that they're in great form. Looking forward to all that spare time on Sunday mornings when they won't have to walk the pitch to see if it's playable or not. Before, lads, we chat about the incredible time you had in Drinagh Rangers. Take me back to this decision. Why have you decided now is the time to step back as manager of the club's senior team?
Will I take? Go on, Declan.
Yeah, work on, yeah. Right.
Okay.
Sorry. I suppose the time seemed right. I suppose really we had looked at this previously 5 or 6 years ago, and we more or less said we weren't giving up as such, but no one really came forward to take it over, so we ended up going back into it again. But and in the meantime, I suppose our club has developed and more coaches have come online as they finish playing careers and all that. Like 5 or 6 years makes a big difference in a playing career, especially. So there's a lot of lads who have retired in the last few years and given up serious playing of the game and have taken up coaching and are in a position, I think, to take it. As well as that, from a club point of view, I would say for a club to develop, the same faces can't be doing the same things all the time. So a change is good, especially when you have new younger people coming in with new ideas, and a change is as good as the rest, as they say.
Don, just to take up what Declan said there about he feels now the time is right to hand the reins over to the next generation of coaches. But still, how hard is it to hand those reins over, considering you've been in charge of the team for so long and you've such success, and you've success right up to this season as well. You just completed the 3 in a row. So, okay, you felt the time was right, but I still presume it was a tough decision for you to make.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, it was a tough decision because I suppose it's something we've been doing for over 20 years, I suppose. And it's hard to imagine not spending the winter going to matches and being on the sideline and things like that. But as Declan said, I suppose everything comes to an end eventually, and there are other people there. And as well as that, I think we've probably, both of us, I think, came to the conclusion that we've done as much as we can. And then it's absolutely going to be hard, because it's going to be hard as well. Like, we've built relationships with players and parents and supporters and whatever else over the time. And I suppose I'm kind of looking forward to going to a game and standing back and watching it and not being involved. But I also feel that it feels like the right time. You know, that it just feels like that for both of us, I think, really.
Declan, let's go right back to the start. You played with Drinagh Rangers as a player as well. You won a couple of, I think it was 4 Premier Division titles. But where did this co-management team start? How did it start? Whose idea was it? Because, like Don said there, you were going for over 20 years. But where did it all originate first day?
Well, I suppose it grew and developed rather than an idea from first day. Don was involved before I started coaching or started managing with him, because I was still playing when Don became the manager. And I was coaching under 18 teams myself for a few years before that. And one person in charge is not enough. You have to have 2 people there. There's too much involved in the whole process for it to work. Otherwise, it was hard enough for 2 of us to keep going on it. But if there was one going, that wouldn't last. Like, it wouldn't be practical or good for a club or good for the environment of the team or anything. Like, it wouldn't make any sense, because there's, I suppose, we worked it between us in that we have different strengths, and which we use those strengths for the benefit of the team or whatever, or the benefit of the club as such. And it developed over the years, rather than being a bright spark of an idea. All of a sudden, oh yes, Declan, Deasy and Don Hurley will do that and they'll make a success of it. It just, at the time, I suppose, I was ready to put my lot in as regards coaching, because I was interested in it at the time, from the underage as well. And there was young lads coming through from those underage teams that I managed that I saw were the future of the club. So, as I say, no light bulb moment, but it just developed from there, really.
Don, how many years have you been in charge of the Drinagh Rangers team? If you had the reins before Declan came on board as well?
I suppose 24, and Declan would be 22, I think, is probably what we worked it out as. It's hard to work them out backwards, but that far back. But I think it was probably September, I think, 98, I think, or that kind of way. So, and then Declan came in 2 years later when he finished up playing. I was with other people for a year or 2, and then Declan took it over. So, yeah, it's a long time.
That's incredible longevity, Don. And just to pick up on that as well, how did you keep it going for those 22 years together? What was the secret to your success? Because I presume there are times over the years where did you butt heads if you decisions over players or different tactics and so on? Like, how did you keep this relationship working for so long?
I'd say patient wives, anyway, first of all, would definitely be a part of it. Well, in fairness, I suppose we work very well together in many ways. I don't think we ever fell out anyway, and that kind of thing. Declan is very patient as well, which he'd be the calmer influence of the 2 of us. And yeah, it was very difficult at times. I mean, there's people, I suppose, all over the place who have been left out for different games, and you know, and that was difficult at times. But sure, look, you have to make a decision. You can only have 11 people on the pitch at any one time, and that was part of it. And people, I suppose, there's different times where people were left out of cup finals or league deciders and had put a huge amount of commitment in. And again, you feel very difficult. You feel bad for the player and our players involved at the time. But sure, I mean, the responsibility as the manager obviously is developing players and that, but I suppose part of your responsibility is to try to win the competition that you're entered in, and you just have to do your best with that.
in last week's Southern Star, Declan, we tried to recount not all of the trophies you've won as the management team, but some of them, and it's an incredible list, like 11 Premier Division titles, 4 Beamish Cups, Parkway Cups, and their Premier Division Cups, Micheál Cronin Cups, and so on. So, a nice easy question, Declan. What stands out for you? What's the highlight from the past 22 years?
Yeah, that's a tough one. All right, there's been many highlights. I think your last competition you win really is the highlight at the time. If you go back over the years, there's a few standout moments, I suppose. All right, doing the 3 in a row and 6 and 7. I think Dan is better than the years than I am now, but we did 3 in a row before, and we did the double in 2007. I think when we won the Beamish Cup and the league, that was a big year for us. 2018, then we won all 5 trophies. I personally think that squad that we had that year, everything came together that year, and that squad that we had that year was the best. Not exactly the best team, but the best squad was definitely that year. We had the best squad we ever had, in that we had a cup final. After 2 minutes, we had our 2 central midfielders injured off, and we were able to bring on 2 players who were possibly as good as, if not better than them, that came on the field on that day. Like, so that definitely for me was one of the highlights. I suppose making a Munster Junior Cup semi-final in 2006, that was massive. That was huge at the time. Like, no club from West Cork went that far before. And the Munster Junior Cup is always a kind of a benchmark to see where you really are against the really good teams. And we matched most of them that year. Like, so for me, that was one of the outstanding things. I suppose the success of our underage club as well as a club. Not that we win everything all the time. We don't. We're a small club as such. So we have good teams now and again, but our structures are good. So that'll be something we'll be look back on fondly and have a good thought on.
The same question to you, Dan. What are the standout moments for you the last 24 years?
There's a lot of them. I suppose winning the league for the first time in 2003, we went down to Bunratty, who had a fabulous team at the time, and they had won it the previous year in the last game of the season in Drinagh. And we went down and we needed a draw, and we were 2-0 down at half time. And we got 2 goals in the second half. In fact, Eamon Conley scored the win, or the equaliser, with about, I think it was very close to injury time. And then there was about 8 or 9 minutes of injury time played. So that one stands out very much because that was the first league. I think we won a Beamish Cup in Turner's Cross as well, which was outstanding. I think that was not even sure the year 2017, I think, against Bay Rovers. And the fact that to go up there and to win a Beamish Cup in Turner's Cross. There's been loads of them. There's been loads of them this year's league. I mean, we were delighted to finish out by winning a 3 in a row, because this year's league was I don't know, in all the years, the quality of some of the teams in this year's league was really, really high. You've done Manway and Bunratty and Clonakilty and those, and I suppose that's what you remember, the most recent one. But I don't know, sometimes you remember the ones that we didn't win, but anyway, that happens too.
I have to ask you too, Don. You were manager there of the team before Declan came on board, and he was still a player. So what was Declan like as a player to manage?
Declan was very easy to manage as a player because he was always on the ball, turned up every day, and sure, Declan had won everything so many times. By the time I got involved, I wasn't telling Declan to do anything really, but Declan had been playing from the first day the club had played, so that was fabulous, and it was great to get him involved because he knew everything, and he knew an awful lot about West Cork and things like that, and the league and that kind of thing. When he became involved, he knew everything, and that helped me as well. Yeah, because I suppose I was only asked to get involved when I moved back to Drinagh that time, and I was fairly green and fairly raw at it, but the team was good and the team was developing, and they won. They when I started, they were in the second division, and then they got back into the Premier Division 2 years in a row, and that kind of, it was a developing team, young players and a mixture of older fellas and things like that. It seems so long ago now, like, but I suppose we've always had a good club in terms of not just Declan and myself. We've always had the support of people locally and and then, I mean, I suppose we had two bands of players, if you like. There's out of that as well, but there's a new band coming now. But we had a really strong band players in kind of 03 when we won 3 in a row, and then again we had a great band of players in the last few years. And I think that they came from 1 or 2 under 12 teams up to under 18 teams, and it just kept us going in that time. And I suppose they interlinked between the two of them, those bands of players, and obviously there was players came at different times as well. But we were lucky in that we had two, if not 3, really strong groups in the length of time that we were there, you know.
Declan, and Don has mentioned it as well in this conversation, that you're handing over the reins of the team as Premier Division champions, so the team is in such good health. But Drinagh have been uber consistent over the last couple of decades. We've just touched on some of the trophies that the club has won and that the senior team has won. What do you put that success down to? Like, it seems very much a team effort that everyone is in this together. But how have Drinagh been so consistent in the West Cork League over the last decade, 2 decades?
They say we have a lot of commitment, given myself and Don, but I think the players have given even more, because the groups of players that we have had and have at the moment have their consistency of showing up. That's the first thing, show up to the game. They're there every Sunday. There's some players in the team that have been playing now with 13 or 14 years. They haven't missed a game, and that's literally challenge game or anything. They haven't missed a game through injury or through any social event in that time. When you're dealing with that kind of commitment, it is very easy to look after a team in the sense that if they're showing up, you know your team, you can pick them. You can pick your team nearly every Sunday because you know they're there. You're not wondering if they're going to show up on a Sunday morning. You know they're going to be there. And if they're not going to be there, they're going to tell you, and they're not going to leave in the lurch. So that is probably the biggest, from my point of view, that's probably the biggest part of the success, is because of their commitment. They mind themselves on a Saturday night. Now, fellas, I suppose when I started playing, the going out nights were Friday night and Sunday night, but it changed over the years and it was Saturday night. And me personally, I never drank my life, but for fellas that do like to drink and do like to have a bit of a social life, it's a big commitment to staying aside on a Saturday night, or even if they go out, that they have to mind themselves and be right for Sunday. Like, that's not easy when everyone else is having a good time, because like we'd say all the GA in the summer, people are very committed to that, and you take your hat off to them, like. But in the middle of winter, then when everyone else is having a good time, they have to mind themselves. I have a game Sunday morning, and it's 11 o'clock Western Goleen, or it's 12 o'clock Western Beara, so, and they're driving down from Cork. So if they're coming down from Cork, it's another hour to go from Drinagh to somewhere else, like. So the biggest part of that success, and it is down to the players at the end of the day. We can organise them, we can tell them what to do in a sense, and we can put them out in the field, but they have to do it at the end of the day, like. So it isn't all about us. It is really about the players at the end of the day, because it's their achievement, not ours. We have a hand in it, but it's down. The players will be remembered for the goals they scored, or the tackles they made, or the saves they made. So it's really, in my opinion anyway, it is down to the players.
You mentioned the players, and this is a question open to both of you, and I don't want to single out one player over the other, but you've managed some really top class players over the years, and straight away in my head, Barry O'Driscoll Hawthorne jumps out. Like, that man is already 30 goals a season average for the last however many seasons since he came on board. Like, incredible consistency and goal scoring. But for you, who are some of those players that you might think, Jesus, they could even have got on to even more, you know?
You're going to get us in trouble here, Kieran, because we leave out someone. I suppose Barry Hawthorne is outstanding, absolutely, and the number of goals he's got is fantastic. I suppose we were lucky in previous to that, we had Michael Doolan and Derek Hanley, who would have scored a tremendous amount of goals as well, and we're lucky that we had forwards. I suppose always that the biggest thing in any game, in any football game, is someone to put the ball in the net, and we were lucky in those terms. It's very hard to mention players. I mean, we've had some brilliant club members, committed players, JJ Collins, JJ Hurley, Barry O'Driscoll, Gavin Daly going back a long way, Michael Hurley. I'm trying to. There's so many of them there. It's absolutely impossible to mention them all. But I mean, it's a local thing, and it's kind of, there's been an awful lot of people in the parish or close to the parish who gave huge amounts of commitment over the years to playing for Drinagh and to making our life easier. I'm already going to my head that I've forgotten loads of names there and that. So Declan might maybe come up with a few more or something like that. But it's not about names, really. It's not about individuals. It was always about putting a team together, putting a team out, and working as a team over a season or a number of seasons in order to do our best, and that was part of the act. That I don't think anybody comes on the soccer pitch in general, or if anybody comes on the soccer pitch playing for Drinagh, playing for themselves, then there's no point in that. You're playing for the other 10 guys on the pitch and whoever's watching and the subs and everything like that. That's who you're playing for, really. You're not just playing for yourself. And I think that's something that we would have had in Drinagh over all the years.
Oh, no, good stuff. And I want to bring it back to you again, Declan. Just you're probably 2 men best placed just to assess the health of the West Cork League right now. Where do you think the league is heading into the new season in a couple of months?
Well, going on the strength of last year's division, it's in a very healthy state because the standard was quite high. The quality of the teams that we had to face this year, even the teams that were relegated, we had to win, and when I say win, we had to earn the win in every game. We didn't get it handed to us. There'd be often years there in the past where there'd be 1 or 2 teams who would be extremely weak or whatever, and to be a gimme of a game or whatever. But this year, and it went right up to the end of the season because teams were fighting for relegation and everything. Every team was highly competitive, and you had to earn the right to win that game. So from that point of view, as regards players, and I think the quality of player has always been there. There is good quality in West Cork. It's a lot of it is down to if you can get your players out. That's the thing. You're competitive and can be competitive against anyone, even the teams up from Cork City and things like that, in Munster Junior Cups and things like that. So, as regards facilities, that's developing as well. Like Skibbereen, Lyre, ourselves are starting to develop. Even Solan, Bear, and they're coming back into it, and they're trying and getting themselves organised, developing and trying to develop grounds and facilities. Facilities is a huge thing. Like the days of tugging off on the side of the road are gone. Really, you cannot in a modern day setting be doing that anymore. You must strive to put something in place where things will improve, because if you build it, they will come. Someone says all the time, and it is true. Like if you have facilities and you have the setup ready there, it attracts people, and if you run it right and do it right in the meantime, then you will attract more people, and more people you attract, it builds your club. So people get interested in it, start putting a bit of work back into it. So I think it's in a good position, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Like there's loads of work. There's never enough work done from that point of view. But look, the future is bright, I think, to be honest.
I'm going to broaden out the conversation a small bit, Don, because you were involved in the West Cork Academy team that did so well at the Kennedy Cup and finished third, an incredible achievement, best ever for our league. And we've a big piece in the Southern Star this Thursday where Joe McCarthy spoke to DJ Curtin, and he touched on what Declan said there, as in what West Cork achieved in the Kennedy Cup without a place to call home as such, without those facilities, without West Cork's own AstroTurf pitch, for example. Like, it's incredible what West Cork did at the Kennedy Cup. So imagine what we could do here if we had those facilities. Is that something, given the success underage and given how well the West Cork League is now, is that a big thing now to get those facilities and just so that next generation coming up, that they can make use of those and just drive this forward for the next couple of decades?
Yeah, I think it's an absolute priority for West Cork League, West Cork Schoolgirls League, and the academy as well. We absolutely need a proper Astro, at least one, probably 2 or 3 really in West Cork, and I think it's something that both the, as I say, both organisations would have spoken to the FAI about, and quite a bit. It's something that it's a huge priority. We're fighting we're competing against leagues, be it Cork or further afield, who have fantastic facilities. I mean, we spent 4 days above or 5 days above in UL, and you look at all the facilities that they have up there for the Kennedy Cup, and it's just fantastic. And we go away in both League and even Drinagh with Munster Junior Cup games and things like that. And you're going away to other teams over the years, and the facilities, the AstroTurf facilities they have, and the all-weather pitches they have. It's something that will come, but it's something that needs to be pushed absolutely. And I suppose hopefully it isn't too far away, because going forward, the winters are getting wetter, and in order to develop players, you need to develop them on good pitches. And we're lucky this year. We were very lucky with the squad in the Kennedy Cup. They were outstanding, and they produced a fantastic week's entertainment for people at home watching them, and for those of us up there, they were outstanding, and it was a brilliant experience. And that's something we should be aiming for. It won't happen every year, but it's something that the West Cork League, as a West Cork Schoolboys League, and the academy and all that, as a small league, to keep developing and keep pushing on over as time passes, you know.
Before I let you go, and you've been so good with your time, you've been involved for so long. So come the start of the new season, Declan, will you be getting those pangs to get back in the sideline? What are you going to do with all your spare time now? You're not involved with the Drinagh Rangers senior team. Have you any Netflix series that you're going to sit down and watch, or where do we see you appear next?
Netflix is great, no doubt about it. No, the beauty of it will be to go to a game and just stand back and enjoy a game. When you're managing a game, you're not entirely enjoying it. Yes, you're enjoying the experience, but it isn't enjoyable unless you win. And we've been lucky that we've won a good few things over the years. That has made it easier. I suppose I'll find time to do things. There will be more time on Sundays, definitely, but I'll be going to games to look at them just from the point of view of supporting the team or whatever, and standing back and not making decisions and letting others do it. As well as that, I'm chairman of the West Cork Schoolboys Schoolgirls League, so I'd like to be able to devote a bit more time to that as well and push that on some more, because I think we're making progress and hopefully continue to make progress. And I'm still involved in the club as secretary and things like that, so I won't be going anywhere as such, but I still have enough to do. And
to you, Don, how are you going to fill your spare time? Because I know you've had incredible success with Drinagh, but when your stepping back was announced on Twitter, Clonakilty Soccer Club's tweet caught my eye. Thank God, enjoy retirement. So I think some of the West Cork League clubs are probably glad to see the back of you, because they might think this is their opportunity now to win a couple of titles. So what's your thoughts looking forward to a season where you're not in charge?
There's lots of competition, in fairness to most on that. I don't think Drinagh will be going away anywhere just because Declan and myself aren't involved. I think Drinagh will be very competitive, and there's a lot of very good young talent in Drinagh, as there is in other clubs. And I don't think they will be falling back at all just because the two of us aren't involved directly. So as Declan is, I'm chairman of the club, and I'm also vice chairman of the West Cork Junior League, so I'm involved in soccer in West Cork completely as well, and I'm going to be probably still involved with that Kennedy Cup squad going forward as well. So lots of things to keep me going. I suppose the one thing I am looking forward to is probably not walking out, getting up early on a Sunday morning to have to walk a pitch to see whether it's playable or not after a night's rain or something like that. That is probably the one thing I am looking forward to. But no, still involved. It's just, I think, a time for somebody else to take up the reins, and a time to do something different, you know.
I know, fantastic. You've been so kind with your time, and congratulations on incredible success with Drinagh over the years. And like you said, you're not going anywhere, which is good news for the West Cork League and the West Cork Schoolboys and Schoolgirls Leagues as well.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Okay, welcome back to the Star Sport podcast once again. And Kieran, it's that time of the week where we take a quick look at what's coming up in this week's Star Sport.
This is, I say it every week, Dylan, I'm almost a broken record, but this week is a really good week. So we've loads of quality reading in there for our readers. Just want to point people towards a piece I have on Brian O'Driscoll. He was man of the match in many people's eyes against Roscommon last weekend, and he was nominated for the GA Footballer of the Week. So it's just a background story to what Brian did when he was exiled from the Cork football panel for the last 4 years, and how he kept himself in shape while he was waiting for the call to come back in. That call might never have come. It might never have come at all. But he never hid his ambition during his time outside the panel that he wanted to get back in. By his own admission before, and on this podcast, he said it back in November 2021, that he made mistakes the last time he was in Cork. He was young, he has regrets. It didn't work out for whatever reason, but he's 29 years of age now. He's at a different stage of his life. And I think people will find this read very interesting. It's just, it fills in some of the, fills in some of the blanks about what Brian was doing in those years outside of Cork, the Cork football setup, because he was the forgotten man in many senses, had the talent, maybe the application wasn't there, but now it is. And what we're seeing is a fantastic footballer who is flying for Cork. So I'd really recommend that. But we have loads more besides. Going to road bowling for a second, there was a lot of county finals and Munster finals last weekend, and a lot of local winners too. Just a shout out to Emma Hurley, who won the under-16 girls final. Emma's from Drinagh, and she's the same young sports person who was the first girl to play with the West Cork schoolboys team in the Kennedy Cup a couple of weeks ago. So what an incredible couple of weeks for Emma Hurley, and that's in Thursday's Southern Star. So we've back to wall-to-wall GA as well. We've something for everyone. We've boxing. Con Desmond won a big competition up in Dublin the weekend. We've motorsport. Martin Walsh is a very interesting story on the Fastnet Rally and how entries could be affected by another rally that's going to run a couple of weeks beforehand. Jack Crowley brought the URC trophy to a local national school with that story. Talking about trophies, Sean Daly from Randalogue brought the 2 All-Ireland under-20 cups and the Munster Cup to Ballinaccarriga for a homecoming of sorts as well. So we've loads and loads in there. So including previews of the Cork Ladies football game, the Cork Camogie game, the Cork footballers, you name it this week, Dylan, we have it. So as I always say, don't be the one to miss out.
Absolutely not. All that will be available in shops across West Cork from Thursday morning. And as always, if you're further afield, you can't make it to the shops, you can subscribe to the Southern Star and get the Southern Star on your laptop, tablet, or phone. So just head to subscribe.southernstar.ie, enter your details, and you'll get an exact replica of the newspaper for less than €2 per week. And Kieran, good news, if any of our listeners want to sign up before Friday, we're doing a flash sale. So you can sign up before Friday, but that's midnight on Friday. I'll have the code flashing up on screen now for anyone watching on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast online, head into the description. You use that code and you can get your first month for just €1. So it's a great time to sign up, especially with all the sport happening at the moment. As always, thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast, and thanks again to our sponsors at Access Credit Union. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get yours, and we'll be back again next week.